Night draped itself over Los Angeles like a heavy blanket, the city's neon lights flickering in the distance. Inside the underground parking lot of Skyline Tower, silence hung thick, broken only by the clicking of Olivia Nguyen's heels. She was 30 years old, 5 months pregnant, and the youngest CEO in the history of Lumina Group. Her luxury coupe gleamed under the fluorescent lights, polished to perfection, yet waiting to betray her. Unbeknownst to Olivia, just hours earlier, her husband Mark Tran had been in this very spot. His hands shook as he bent near her car, a pair of bolt cutters glinting under the dim light. Lisa Vo, his lover, had whispered the poison into his ear. If she disappears, everything will be yours. Mark's jealousy of Olivia's power, her wealth, her influence had finally boiled over. Tonight, he had cut the brakes. Now Olivia slid into the driver's seat, her hand gently brushing her stomach. "Don't worry, little one," she murmured, smiling at the tiny life inside her. She started the engine, unaware that her ride home would become a death trap. The roads outside Los Angeles were slick from an unexpected drizzle. Olivia drove carefully, humming to the radio. She thought of her father Hui waiting for her in his modest suburban home, and how happy he'd be to share dinner with her. She thought of Mia, her younger sister, who had just texted, "Bring dessert, sis." Olivia's lips curled into a soft smile. For a moment, life felt tender, safe. Then on a winding road near the outskirts, something shifted. She pressed the brake as a red light flashed ahead. Nothing. The pedals slammed flat against the floor, useless. Panic shot through her veins. "No, no, no," she cried, gripping the wheel. Her coupe gained speed, tires screeching on the wet pavement. She tried the emergency brake. Nothing. The car barreled down the slope, the city lights shrinking in her rearview mirror. Horns blared from other vehicles swerving to avoid her. Olivia's heart pounded in terror, one hand instinctively covering her belly. "Please, not my baby." The guardrail appeared too quickly. Metal screamed as the car smashed through it. For one split second, time froze. Olivia saw the twinkling lights of Los Angeles below, the vast darkness waiting to swallow her whole. Then gravity claimed her. The coupe plummeted down the cliffside, flipping, glass shattering, sparks flying. Inside the wreck, airbags deployed with brutal force. Olivia's body slammed forward, her head striking the steering wheel. Blood streaked across her face. The monitor app on her phone, tracking her baby's heartbeat, slipped from her pocket, its screen flashing before going dark. The mangled car came to rest halfway down the slope, smoke curling from the hood. Olivia's eyes fluttered, her breath shallow. She whispered faintly, "Dad, Mia," before losing consciousness. Just then, headlights cut through the fog. A black SUV screeched to a halt. From it emerged a tall man in a dark coat, Richard Hale, billionaire investor, returning from a late business meeting. He spotted the wreck, his eyes widening. Without hesitation, he ran down the embankment, tearing open the twisted door. "Stay with me, please," Richard shouted, lifting Olivia's broken body into his arms. Her pulse was fading fast. He looked up at the starless sky, his voice raw with urgency. "Don't you dare die on me." Her fate was hanging by a thread, and Mark believed his plan had worked. Just 24 hours before the crash, the Skyline Tower boardroom glittered with polished glass walls and a sweeping view of downtown Los Angeles. Olivia Nguyen sat at the head of the long mahogany table, her black tailored suit hugging her frame, though the soft curve of her pregnancy was visible beneath it. Even in her delicate condition, she radiated authority. Her employees admired her. Investors trusted her. To them, she wasn't just the youngest CEO of Lumina Group. She was the heartbeat of the company. But sitting 2 chairs down was her husband, Mark Tran. Officially, he was Lumina's operations director, a position Olivia had awarded him when they married. On paper, he looked competent. In reality, he resented every moment he worked under her. Each meeting reminded him he was living in his wife's shadow. Olivia tapped her pen and addressed the team, her voice calm but firm. "Starting next quarter, we'll restructure supplier contracts. Too much leakage. We need transparency." The executives nodded in agreement. Grace Pham, Olivia's best friend and head of HR, shot her a proud smile. "Brilliant move, Olivia. You're always 3 steps ahead." But Mark's jaw tightened. He scribbled in his notebook, hiding his disdain. His male ego screamed at the sight of his wife commanding the room. When the meeting ended, Olivia placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Mark, You've done great work with logistics. Let's review the reports together tonight. Her words were kind, sincere. But instead of pride, Mark felt only humiliation. To him, her gesture wasn't support, it was pity. Later that evening, Olivia returned to her penthouse, slipping off her heels with a tired sigh. She changed into a soft knit dress, her hand instinctively resting on her belly as she walked into the kitchen. Her father Hui called from his suburban home. "Kungai, are you coming tomorrow? I'll make your favorite soup. Mia's waiting too." Olivia's voice softened. "Yes, Dad, I'll be there. Don't overwork yourself." For her, family was everything. But while Olivia cherished family bonds, Mark found solace elsewhere. In a dimly lit lounge across town, Lisa Vo leaned closer to him, her red lips curling into a sly smile. "She doesn't see you as her equal, Mark. She never will. You'll always be the man in her shadow." Mark's fists clenched around his glass. "I'm tired of it. She controls everything. The company, the money, even me." Lisa whispered, her voice like venom. "Then take what should be yours. If Olivia were gone, think of the power, the wealth, the freedom. We could rule this city together." Mark swallowed hard. He looked away, torn between fear and temptation. Lisa slid her hand across his. "All it takes is one night, one plan. She'll never know what hit her." Back at the penthouse, Olivia stood on the balcony, gazing at the city lights. She whispered to her unborn child, "You're the reason I keep fighting. You'll grow up knowing love." But across town, her husband leaned in and kissed his lover, his heart pounding with a dangerous resolve. And with that kiss, Olivia's fate had already begun to unravel. The next day, Olivia moved through the buzzing halls of Lumina Group with quiet grace. Employees greeted her with respect, bowing their heads as she passed. She carried herself with the dignity of a leader who had built everything through discipline and vision. But in the corner of the lobby cafe, a different scene was unfolding. Mark sat with Lisa in a secluded booth, his suit jacket carelessly draped over the seat, his tie loosened. Lisa, in a sleek black dress, looked like temptation personified. Her eyes gleamed with ambition as she stirred her coffee slowly. "Why do you let her control you like this?" Lisa asked, her tone dripping with scorn. "Every decision, every dollar, you're just her shadow." Mark clenched his jaw, leaning forward. "You think I don't know that? She built this empire, and I'm the one fetching reports like a damn assistant. She treats me like I should be grateful." Lisa smirked. "You should be leading, not bowing. A man like you deserves to rule, but as long as she's breathing, that won't happen." Mark's eyes darted around nervously. "Careful, Lisa, people might hear." Lisa leaned closer, her voice a whisper. "Then listen closely. You don't need to play second to anyone. If Olivia were gone, her assets, her company, her power, they'd all be yours. And we'd finally be free." Mark sat back, his breathing uneven. The idea was monstrous, yet it sparked something dark inside him. He imagined the board looking at him with respect, imagined the wealth, imagined no more nights spent explaining himself to a woman who outshone him at every turn. At that same moment, upstairs in her office, Olivia smiled warmly as Grace walked in with a stack of HR files. "Here's the report you asked for," Grace said, setting the folders down. "By the way, Mia texted me. She's excited to see you tonight." Olivia laughed gently. "My sister can't keep a secret. She's planning something with Dad, I just know it." Her hand drifted to her belly. "I can't wait for this little one to meet the whole family." The contrast was painful. Olivia's world of love and trust versus Mark's growing hunger and deceit. That night, Mark and Lisa met again at a rooftop bar overlooking the glittering skyline. Champagne glasses clinked as Lisa leaned in close. "It doesn't have to be messy," she purred. "Accidents happen every day. A brake failure, a tragic loss. Everyone will pity you. And the company, it will naturally fall into your hands." Mark's throat tightened. He sipped his drink to mask his unease. The thought of killing his pregnant wife churned his stomach. Yet Lisa's words were intoxicating. Her hand traced his arm, her voice a spell. "Think of the future, Mark. Our future." Below them, cars zipped along the freeway, tiny dots of light moving in patterns. Mark stared down, his mind spinning. Could it really be that simple? Lisa pressed her lips to his ear, sealing the poison. One night, one car ride, and she's gone. Mark's hand trembled as he set his glass down. His silence was all the answer Lisa needed. And so the seed of betrayal was planted, waiting to grow into something deadly. The sun dipped below the Los Angeles skyline, painting the city in streaks of gold and violet. Olivia was in her penthouse office, signing the last of the quarterly reports. She looked tired but fulfilled, one hand resting gently on her stomach, as if to draw strength from the tiny heartbeat within her. Outside her glass walls, the city hummed with life. Unaware of the storm quietly brewing in her own home. Down in a quiet downtown loft, Mark sat at the edge of a couch, his shoulders tense, his eyes bloodshot. Lisa paced the room like a cat, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. She had been feeding him venom for weeks, but tonight, her tone carried a deadly urgency. "Mark," she said sharply, stopping to face him, "you can't keep dragging this out. Every day she breathes, you live as her shadow. Do you want to die a nobody?" Mark rubbed his temples. "She's my wife, Lisa, the mother of my child. Do you have any idea what you're asking me to do?" Lisa's laughter was cold. "Your child? Don't fool yourself. That baby won't save you. Olivia only sees you as an accessory, a trophy husband. She controls everything, the company, the money, even your future. With her gone, you'd inherit everything. Isn't that what you've always wanted?" Mark's chest rose and fell heavily. His mind flashed with images, the boardroom where Olivia commanded respect, the looks of admiration she received, his father-in-law praising her success while barely acknowledging him. His pride burned, clawing at his insides. Lisa leaned down, placing her hands on his knees, forcing his eyes to meet hers. Her voice softened into a dangerous whisper. "It doesn't have to be bloody. Just mechanical failure, a tragic accident. Everyone will pity the poor widower, and I'll be right here with you." Her perfume enveloped him, intoxicating, pulling him deeper into the abyss. Mark swallowed hard, his hands trembling. "And if they suspect?" Lisa smirked. "There won't be anything to suspect. Cars break down all the time. A slipped brake line, a missed inspection. By the time they call it an accident, you'll already have everything." Silence hung heavy in the loft. The weight of her words pressed down on Mark's chest. He rose from the couch, walking to the window. The city glittered below, but all he could see was the cage he had built for himself, living in Olivia's shadow, never enough, never equal. He turned back, his face pale but resolved. "What do you want me to do?" Lisa's lips curved into a satisfied smile. "Tomorrow night, she's visiting her father, isn't she? Cut the brakes before she leaves. The car will do the rest." Mark's breath hitched. His hands clenched into fists, as he whispered, almost to himself, "Tomorrow night." Lisa wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her lips against his ear. "Our freedom begins with her end." Mark closed his eyes, a storm raging inside him. But when he opened them again, the last traces of hesitation were gone. And with that decision, the trap for Olivia was finally set in motion. The underground parking garage of Skyline Tower was silent that night, the kind of silence that carried an unsettling weight. The fluorescent lights flickered occasionally, casting eerie shadows across the rows of expensive cars. Among them, Olivia's silver coupe gleamed, a symbol of her success, her independence, her place as one of the city's youngest CEOs. Mark Tran stood near the vehicle, his heart pounding so loudly he could hear it echo in his ears. In his gloved hand was a pair of heavy-duty cutters, their steel jaws catching the dim light. His breathing was uneven, ragged, as sweat trickled down the back of his neck. He glanced around the garage, but no one was there. Only the faint hum of the building's generators kept him company. Lisa's words replayed in his mind, wrapping tighter around him like chains. "Tomorrow night. Cut the brakes. She'll never see it coming." Mark knelt beside the coupe, his hands trembling as he popped open the panel beneath. He knew enough about cars to do what needed to be done. His father had been a mechanic once. He had shown Mark the basics as a boy. Now those memories were being twisted into tools for murder. The metal squealed under pressure as Mark clipped the brake line. A single drop of fluid leaked out, then another. He stared at it, horrified yet unable to stop. His vision blurred as the image of Olivia's face flashed in his mind, her warm smile, the way she rested her hand on her pregnant belly, the softness in her voice when she told him she believed in him. His grip faltered. For one fragile second, he nearly dropped the cutters and ran. But then Lisa's face rose in his thoughts, her eyes sharp, her voice poisonous. "Do you want to die a nobody, or live like a king?" Mark forced himself to finish the job. He cut deeper, severing the line completely. The hiss of escaping fluid filled the air, then silence again. His breathing grew heavy, almost animalistic, as he wiped the sweat from his forehead. He stood, staring at the car, at the gleaming machine that would soon become his wife's coffin. His stomach twisted violently, bile rising in his throat. He staggered back a step, clutching his chest. "God, forgive me," he whispered into the empty garage. But forgiveness never answered. At that exact moment, the elevator chimed. Mark's heart nearly stopped. He whipped his head toward the sound. A security guard stepped out, yawning, a flashlight dangling from his belt. Mark quickly shoved the cutters into his jacket and forced a casual smile. "Working late, Mr. Tran?" the guard asked, barely glancing his way. Mark nodded stiffly. "Yeah. Just checking something on my wife's car." The guard shrugged, uninterested, and walked in the opposite direction. Mark exhaled shakily, his knees weak, his palms slick with sweat. That close call only hammered home the reality. There was no turning back now. He placed his hand on the hood of Olivia's coupe one last time, his eyes dark with guilt and greed. Then he whispered, "Tomorrow, it all ends." And as he walked away, the car waited silently, its fate and Olivia's sealed by the cut he had just made. The morning sun streamed through the glass walls of Olivia Nguyen's penthouse, casting a golden glow across the living room. Olivia stood near the window, sipping warm tea, her hand gently resting on her pregnant belly. She smiled faintly as she read a message from her father. "Dinner's ready for tonight. Don't forget dessert. Mia can't wait to see you." Her heart warmed. Family was her safe harbor, her reason to keep fighting through endless board meetings, corporate battles, and long nights. Tonight would be peaceful, she thought. Tonight would be simple. She slipped into a cream-colored dress and a tailored coat, her hair pulled back neatly. She looked every inch the poised CEO, but inside, she felt like a daughter eager to see her father and a sister excited to laugh with Mia. As she gathered her things, she didn't notice the faint oil stain near her car in the underground garage, a silent reminder of the sabotage waiting to reveal itself. Meanwhile, Mark sat at his office desk in Skyline Tower, pretending to work. His eyes flickered to his phone every few minutes, nerves gnawing at him. Lisa had texted earlier, "This is it. Tonight changes everything." He clenched his fists, trying to calm his shaking hands. He had done it. He had cut the brakes. Now all he had to do was wait. But instead of relief, a gnawing dread sat in his stomach, clawing at him like a wild animal. Olivia arrived at the garage and smiled faintly at her reflection in the coupe's shiny door. She opened the driver's side, settling into the seat with a sigh of contentment. Buckling her seatbelt, she whispered softly to her unborn child, "We're going to see Grandpa. You'll love him." The engine roared to life, smooth as ever. She eased the car out of the garage, merging onto the main road. The city was alive with late afternoon traffic, but Olivia remained calm, weaving gracefully between lanes. Halfway to her father's home, the freeway began to climb. The road narrowed, twisting into the hillside. Clouds gathered, dimming the sun, and a drizzle began to slick the asphalt. Olivia gripped the wheel firmly, her focus sharpening. Then it happened. She pressed the brake as she approached a red light on the incline. Nothing. The pedals sank flat to the floor. Her breath caught. She pressed harder. Still nothing. Panic flared in her chest. "No. No. Please. Not now," she cried, her hands trembling on the wheel. The car accelerated downhill, tires screeching on the wet pavement. Horns blared from passing cars. Olivia yanked the emergency brake, but it failed, useless against the severed line. The coupe barreled forward, unstoppable. Her heart thundered, one hand instinctively clutching her belly. "Hold on, baby. Please hold on." Tears blurred her vision as the world around her became a blur of headlights and screaming horns. Up in his office, Mark's phone buzzed with a news alert. "Breaking. Car crash reported on Highway 17. He froze, staring at the words, his breath shallow. Lisa's voice echoed in his mind. "This is it. Tonight changes everything." And as Olivia's car raced out of control toward the sharp curve ahead, fate was about to deliver its brutal blow. The coupe shot down the wet incline like a bullet, its headlights slicing through the fog. Olivia's knuckles turned white as she gripped the steering wheel, her heart hammering against her chest. Every nerve in her body screamed survival. She slammed the brake pedal again. Still nothing. The car didn't slow. "God, please!" she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her mind flashed with images of her father waiting with soup on the table, of Mia giggling, of her unborn child's tiny heartbeat. Fear clawed at her throat, but instinct took over. She swerved sharply, avoiding a truck that honked furiously. The coupe skidded, water spraying from its tires. Olivia tried the horn, hoping anyone could help. But her cries were drowned by the roar of her dying car. The city lights grew distant behind her as the road narrowed into a sharp cliffside curve. Inside the Lumina Tower, Mark paced his office. His hands shook as he checked his phone again. A new alert. Severe accident on Highway 17. Vehicle suspected to have lost control. His stomach twisted violently. He wanted this, didn't he? This was what he and Lisa had planned. So why did his chest feel like it was collapsing? Meanwhile, Lisa lounged in her apartment, sipping wine. She read the alert too, her lips curling into a smile. "It's done," she whispered to herself, her eyes glittering with triumph. Back on the highway, Olivia's coupe hurtled toward the guardrail. The sound was deafening, metal screeching against metal, as the car smashed through the barrier. For a fraction of a second, she saw the endless drop below. Darkness, rocks, nothingness. Her scream echoed into the night. The vehicle plummeted down the cliff, flipping violently. Glass shattered, shards slicing across her arms. The airbag exploded with brutal force, slamming her chest and abdomen. Olivia's head snapped forward, blood streaking across her face. She clutched her belly desperately. "My baby, please, not my baby." The world spun, a whirl of sparks, fire, and crushing metal. Finally, the coupe slammed against a rocky slope, tumbling before coming to a twisted, smoking halt. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of the mangled engine. Olivia's breathing was shallow, ragged. Her eyes fluttered open, blurred by tears and blood. She tried to move, but pain ripped through her body. She looked down, trembling hands reaching for her stomach. No movement, no flutter. A chilling silence replaced the rhythm she had carried inside her for months. Her lips parted in agony. "No, please, don't take my baby." Somewhere above, headlights appeared through the fog. A sleek black SUV slowed near the broken guardrail. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark coat. Richard Hale, billionaire investor, had pulled over on his way back from a late-night meeting. He saw the wreckage below. His eyes widened, and without hesitation, he sprinted down the embankment. Slipping on wet rocks, he ripped open the twisted car door, coughing at the smoke. "Stay with me," he shouted, his voice raw. He unbuckled Olivia's limp body, cradling her against his chest. Her pulse was faint, barely there. Her blood stained his shirt, her tears smearing against his collar. Richard looked up at the starless sky, his voice breaking. "Don't you die on me. Not tonight, not like this." And as thunder rolled above, Olivia's life hung by the thinnest thread, while Mark believed his deadly plan had succeeded. The hospital lights were blinding, cold, and relentless. Sirens had wailed all the way from the cliff to St. Matthew's Private Medical Center, but now silence pressed heavy against Richard Hale's ears as he ran beside the gurney. Olivia Nguyen's body lay limp, her skin pale, blood streaking across her forehead. Her breaths came in shallow gasps, each one weaker than the last. 30-year-old female, 5 months pregnant, severe trauma, possible internal bleeding, shouted a paramedic as they burst through the ER doors. Richard's chest heaved, his eyes glued to Olivia's face. He had seen countless business deals collapse, fortunes lost in seconds, but nothing had ever felt this desperate. "She's not just another patient," he whispered fiercely to the staff, his voice cracking. "Save her. Do whatever it takes." Dr. Min, a seasoned trauma surgeon, met his eyes. "We'll do everything we can, but you need to stay outside." Richard froze at the swinging doors as the gurney disappeared. He pressed a trembling hand against his forehead, his shirt still soaked with Olivia's blood. His heart thundered. He barely knew her, yet in that moment, saving her felt like the only thing that mattered. Inside the operating room, chaos erupted. Nurses rushed with IVs, machines beeped frantically, and Dr. Min barked orders. "We're losing her pressure. Get blood ready, stat, and check for fetal heartbeat." A young nurse placed the ultrasound probe gently on Olivia's abdomen. The room fell into an unbearable silence. Seconds dragged like hours. Then, nothing. No flutter, no rhythm. Only a flat, empty screen. The nurse's voice broke. "Doctor, the baby's gone." Dr. Min closed his eyes for a moment, then forced himself forward. "Focus on the mother. We can't lose her too." Outside, Richard paced like a caged animal. Every scream of a monitor inside stabbed his chest. His fists clenched so tightly his knuckles whitened. He hated feeling powerless. Billionaire or not, all his money, all his power couldn't control what was happening beyond those doors. Hours passed. Finally, Dr. Min emerged, pulling down his mask. His expression was grave. "She's stable, for now," he said slowly. "But she lost the baby. I'm sorry." The words hit Richard like a physical blow. He looked toward the ICU doors where Olivia lay unconscious. He imagined the pain she would feel when she woke, the devastation of knowing her child was gone. "Can I see her?" Richard asked softly. Dr. Min nodded. Briefly. Richard entered the dim room, his steps heavy. Olivia lay motionless, tubes connected, machines beeping steadily. Her face was bruised, her lips dry, but she was alive. He pulled a chair beside her bed and lowered himself, taking her cold hand in his. "You're safe now," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I won't let anyone hurt you again." For the first time in his life, Richard wasn't thinking about boardrooms or contracts. He was thinking about a broken woman he barely knew, a woman who had been betrayed by the person closest to her. Suddenly, Olivia stirred, her lips parting as though she were fighting to speak. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy, weighed down by pain. Richard leaned closer, his heart pounding. "Olivia, can you hear me?" Her lips trembled. A single word escaped in a broken whisper. "Baby," before her monitors began to spike wildly. And in that terrifying instant, the fight for Olivia's life was far from over. The rain fell steadily over Los Angeles the following weekend, as though the heavens themselves mourned. Black umbrellas dotted the cemetery grounds where a quiet memorial had been arranged for Olivia Unwin. Friends, colleagues, and family gathered in somber silence, their faces etched with grief. A large photograph of Olivia, smiling in her signature white blazer, stood at the center of the ceremony. White lilies framed the image, their fragrance sharp in the damp air. But there was no casket, no body, only ashes of flowers and unanswered questions. Her father Hai stood at the front, his hands trembling as he clutched Mia's shoulder. His eyes were swollen, his voice hoarse. "My daughter gave her life for her work, for her family, for her child. And now both are gone." He paused, choking on the words. "But we will remember her light." Mia sobbed uncontrollably, burying her face against her father's chest. She had begged to see Olivia's body, to hold her one last time, but Mark had insisted there was nothing left after the crash. He said the car had exploded, that identifying remains was impossible. His explanation silenced questions, but unease lingered in the crowd. Mark, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, stood stiffly beside a grieving act. His face was a mask of sorrow, but his eyes betrayed no tears. From the corner of the cemetery, Lisa watched under her umbrella, her red lips curved into a faint, secret smile. Grace Pham, Olivia's closest friend, approached Mark with narrowed eyes. "Why so soon? Shouldn't we wait for an official confirmation?" Mark lowered his gaze, feigning pain. "The investigator said the crash was catastrophic. There's no chance she survived. I just wanted closure." Grace studied him, suspicion brewing, but she didn't press further. She wrapped her arms around Mia instead, whispering, "I'll look after you." As the ceremony continued, whispers rippled among the mourners. Some felt the memorial was rushed, others questioned the lack of a proper investigation. Still, Mark played his role convincingly, shaking hands, receiving condolences, bowing his head with feigned humility. Yet inside, his heart thundered for a different reason. He wasn't mourning. He was calculating. Every polite nod, every hand he shook brought him closer to the wealth and power Lisa had promised. Soon the company would be his. Soon everything Olivia had built would fall into his grasp. But in a quiet corner of St. Matthew's Private Medical Center, far from the mourners, Olivia Nguyen still breathed. Her body lay fragile in the ICU, hooked up to machines. Richard Hale sat faithfully beside her, his broad shoulders hunched, his hand wrapped around hers. He hadn't left her side since the surgery. "She doesn't know," Richard whispered to Dr. Min, who stood at the doorway. "She doesn't know about her baby, or about the funeral they're holding right now." Dr. Min sighed heavily. "When she wakes, the truth will crush her, but she's strong. If anyone can survive this, it's her." Richard glanced at Olivia's face, bruised but peaceful in sleep. His jaw tightened with silent promise. "Then I'll make sure she has a reason to fight. She won't face this alone." Back at the cemetery, the priest closed the service with a final prayer. May her soul rest in eternal peace. Mark bowed his head solemnly. But deep inside, he believed he had won. What he didn't know was that Olivia's fight and her revenge was only just beginning. The steady beeping of machines filled the dim ICU room, the only reminder that Olivia Nguyen was still clinging to life. Days had passed since the crash, and though her body remained weak, her will had not surrendered. Bandages wrapped her ribs and forehead, IV lines snaked across her arms, and every breath sounded like a fragile battle. Richard Hale sat beside her bed, his dark suit crumpled from nights without sleep. He had built empires, negotiated billion-dollar deals, and stared down ruthless rivals, yet nothing felt as critical as watching over the fragile woman lying in front of him. When Dr. Min entered with her chart, Richard looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "Tell me the truth. Is she going to make it?" The doctor adjusted his glasses, his voice calm but measured. "Her condition is still critical, but she's stable enough for now. What she needs most is rest and protection." "Protection?" Richard asked, frowning. Dr. Min lowered his voice. "Mr. Hale, the brake failure wasn't an accident. Someone wanted her dead. If word gets out that she survived, whoever planned this might try again." Richard's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with fury. He didn't need to ask who. He already suspected. "So what do you suggest? We keep her survival a secret?" Dr. Min said firmly. "Only a handful of people can know. No public records, no names on the hospital log. To the outside world, Olivia Nguyen is gone." Richard leaned back in his chair, his gaze returning to Olivia. She looked so fragile, yet he knew beneath that frailty was a fighter. He reached for her hand, his voice steady. "Then she'll heal in silence, and when the time is right, she'll rise again." Meanwhile, at Skyline Tower, Mark stood before the board of directors, his tie perfectly knotted, his expression somber. "I want to thank you all for your support during this devastating time," he said, voice dripping with false grief. "Olivia would want Lumina Group to continue thriving. With your confidence, I'll ensure her legacy lives on." Some directors nodded, their sympathy softening their skepticism. Others exchanged wary glances. Grace Pham, seated near the end of the table, watched Mark intently. Something about his polished sorrow felt rehearsed, hollow. Her gut whispered that Olivia's story wasn't finished. Back at the hospital, night had fallen. Richard sat by the window, his silhouette outlined by the glow of city lights. He had canceled meetings, ignored calls. Everything could wait. His eyes stayed fixed on Olivia. Then, suddenly, her fingers twitched in his hand. He turned sharply, leaning closer. Olivia's eyelids fluttered, and for the first time since the crash, her eyes opened. They were glassy, disoriented, but alive. "Easy," Richard murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're safe. Don't try to move." Her lips parted, her voice barely audible. "The baby?" Richard froze. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind, but hearing the word tore at him. His throat tightened. He couldn't lie, but he couldn't crush her either. Dr. Min stepped in quickly, his voice low and compassionate. "Olivia, you've been through something terrible. The important thing is, you're alive." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as she turned her face away. Her hand trembled in Richard's, and in that silent, broken moment, a fire began to kindle inside her. The fire of a woman betrayed, ready to rise again. The following morning, Olivia awoke to a soft glow filtering through the curtains of her hospital room. Her body ached as though every bone had been shattered, but it wasn't the physical pain that tormented her, it was the heavy silence in her heart. Richard Hale sat nearby, his chair pulled close to her bed. His eyes, lined with exhaustion, softened when she stirred. "You're awake," he said gently. "How are you feeling?" Olivia blinked slowly, her voice rasping. "Empty? I feel empty." Richard hesitated, then reached for her hand, steadying his tone. "You survived something no one thought possible. That takes strength." Her gaze drifted to her belly, her trembling hands tracing the blanket. "My baby," she whispered. "Where's my baby?" The room seemed to freeze. Richard's throat tightened, but he didn't answer. It was Dr. Min who entered at that moment, holding her chart, his expression grave. "Olivia," he began softly, "you suffered severe trauma during the crash. We did everything we could, but the baby didn't make it." The words sliced through her like a knife. Tears blurred her vision as her chest heaved. "No, no, please, you're lying." She shook her head violently, pain searing through her ribs. My baby was fine. I felt the kicks. I heard the heartbeat. He was alive. Richard gripped her hand tighter, his own eyes glassy. I'm so sorry. I wish I could change it. But you're still here, Olivia, and that matters. You matter. Olivia sobbed, curling into herself, her whole body trembling. I promised I'd protect him. I failed. Richard's voice grew firm. You didn't fail. Someone failed you. Her tears slowed as she lifted her eyes to him. What do you mean? Richard hesitated, but Dr. Min gave a small nod, urging honesty. The crash wasn't an accident, Richard said quietly. Your brakes were cut. Olivia's breath hitched. She stared at him in disbelief. Cut? No, that's impossible. Who would? Her words caught in her throat, her mind racing back to Mark's cold distance, the way he had pulled away in recent weeks, the secretive texts, the unexplained absences. No, she whispered, her face paling. Not him. He's my husband, the father of my baby. Richard's jaw tightened, anger flashing in his eyes. He had the most to gain, and the woman he's been seeing, Lisa Vo, she's been pushing him. They wanted your company, your fortune. Olivia's heart shattered again, this time with a different kind of pain. Betrayal burned hotter than grief. She had given Mark everything, her love, her trust, her loyalty, and he had answered with murder. Her tears dried into something sharper, harder. She sat up slowly despite the pain, her voice shaking but resolute. He killed our baby. He tried to kill me. Richard leaned closer, his voice low but steady. Then you must decide, Olivia. Do you stay hidden, or do you rise and fight back? She looked at him, her eyes red, but blazing with new fire. Her voice was cold, almost unrecognizable. I will make him regret the day he ever touched my life. And in that moment, Olivia Nguyen stopped being a victim. She began her transformation into a woman seeking justice. At the luxurious rooftop lounge of the Avalon Hotel, laughter and clinking glasses echoed against the night sky. The view stretched across downtown Los Angeles, lights shimmering like diamonds. It should have been a night of mourning, but for Mark Tran and Lisa Vo, it was a night of triumph. Mark leaned back in a velvet booth, a glass of whiskey in hand. His black suit was crisp, his hair styled perfectly, but the hollow gleam in his eyes betrayed his true nature. Across from him, Lisa sparkled in a red dress, her fingers adorned with rings she had no right to wear, her smile smug and poisonous. To us, Lisa said, raising her glass. To freedom, to power, to everything that should have been ours all along. Mark smirked, clinking his glass against hers. To a new beginning. He swallowed the whiskey in one gulp, as if trying to drown the guilt clawing at his conscience. Lisa leaned in, her voice a low whisper. Don't look so grim. You did what had to be done. Olivia's gone. Her empire? Soon it will be under your name, and I'll be by your side. Mark glanced around nervously, lowering his voice. What if someone starts asking questions? The police? The insurance company? Lisa waved her hand dismissively. They won't. You said it yourself. No one can prove anything. The car was destroyed. The accident was tragic, but believable. All you need to do is play the grieving widower. Mark's lips twisted into something that was almost a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He thought about the memorial, about Hai's trembling hands, about Mia's sobs. For a brief second, he felt something. Shame, maybe. But then he reminded himself of what waited. Money, control, power. Lisa placed her hand on his, squeezing firmly. This is our time, Mark. Don't let guilt ruin it. She's gone, and she's not coming back. Across town, in the quiet of St. Matthew's Medical Center, Olivia stirred in her hospital bed. Her eyes opened slowly, her face pale, her heart heavy with grief and betrayal. Richard sat beside her, reading reports, but he immediately set them aside when he noticed her movement. You're awake, he said softly. Olivia's voice was fragile. They think I'm dead, don't they? Richard nodded. Yes, and that's what keeps you safe for now. Her jaw tightened, her gaze hardening. Then let them believe it. But when I rise again, they'll regret underestimating me. Back at the Avalon rooftop, Lisa leaned across the table, kissing Mark deeply. He didn't resist. The music swelled around them. The city lights glittered below, and in their arrogance, they believed they had won. They didn't notice Grace Pham at the far end of the lounge, seated quietly with a friend. She froze when she saw Mark and Lisa together, their intimacy undeniable. Her stomach turned. She remembered Olivia's suspicions, her unease. Now Grace had proof. Her hand tightened around her phone. She couldn't confront them here. Not yet. But she knew one thing for certain. Olivia deserved the truth. And as Mark and Lisa toasted their victory, Grace's discovery set in motion a chain of events that would shatter their illusion of control. The soft hum of machines filled the hospital room, but Olivia Nguyen's gaze was no longer clouded by confusion. Her eyes were sharper now, though they carried the heavy weight of grief. She sat propped up against the pillows, a silk blanket draped over her fragile frame. Every breath still hurt, but the fire in her heart burned stronger than the pain. Richard Hale entered quietly, carrying a tray with soup and water. His expensive suit looked wrinkled, his tie loosened, an unusual sight for the billionaire who was always immaculately put together. He placed the tray gently on the table beside her bed. "You should eat," Richard said softly. "You need strength if you want to heal." Olivia glanced at him, her voice hoarse. "Strength? I feel like I've lost everything. My baby, my life, even my dignity. The people closest to me betrayed me." Richard sat down, his expression calm but firm. "You haven't lost everything. You're still here. And as long as you're breathing, you haven't lost your chance to fight back." Her eyes flickered with pain. "Fight back? Against who?" "My own husband." Richard leaned forward, his voice steady. "Yes, Mark wanted you dead, and Lisa helped him. You don't have to carry this alone, Olivia. You have me now." Tears welled in her eyes. "Why? Why would you care about me? You barely knew me before this." Richard's gaze softened. "Because I know what betrayal feels like. Years ago, my mother was left broken by a man who was supposed to protect her. I swore I'd never let anyone close to me suffer like that again. When I pulled you out of that wreckage, I saw a woman fighting for her life, for her child. You deserve someone who will fight for you too." Olivia's throat tightened. She turned her face away, unable to stop the tears from falling. "I don't even know how to live with this pain. I failed my baby. I trusted the wrong man." Richard reached out, gently turning her face back toward him. His voice was quiet but unyielding. "You didn't fail. He failed you, and he will pay for it. I promise you, Olivia, Mark and Lisa won't win, not while I'm here." His words hung heavy in the air, steady and unwavering. For the first time since the crash, Olivia felt something other than grief. It was faint, fragile, but it was there. Hope. Across the city, in a penthouse far less warm, Mark and Lisa toasted again, celebrating their growing control. But Mark's phone buzzed with an email. The insurance company had requested further investigation before releasing funds. His smile faltered. Lisa noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked sharply. "They're delaying the payout," Mark muttered. "They want more proof." Lisa's eyes narrowed. "Then you'd better handle it. We didn't come this far to let paperwork ruin us." Back at the hospital, Richard gently placed his hand over Olivia's. His touch was protective, grounding. "Rest now. Tomorrow, we plan. You won't face them alone." Olivia closed her eyes, her tears drying into resolve. She whispered, "I'll make them pay." And though her body was weak, her spirit had awakened. A storm was coming for Mark and Lisa, and they had no idea it was already on its way. The next morning, the offices of Lumina Group buzzed with tension. Employees moved quietly through the halls, the air thick with unease. Olivia Nguyen's death had left a void no one could fill, and though Mark Tran presented himself as the grieving widower turned leader, whispers of doubt echoed behind closed doors. Grace Pham sat in her glass-walled office, flipping through documents with restless fingers. She had been Olivia's closest friend for years, her confidant, her ally. Nothing about this so-called accident sat right with her. She remembered the funeral, the rushed arrangements, the absence of a body, the hollow words from Mark. Something in her gut screamed that the story didn't add up. Grace opened her laptop and pulled up the building's security logs from the night before the crash. She scrolled through camera feeds, her brow furrowing. The footage from the garage, the very section where Olivia's car had been parked, was missing 21 minutes. Deleted. Her heart pounded. 21 minutes was long enough for sabotage. She printed the log, sliding it into a folder when her office door creaked open. Mark stepped inside, his face painted with sorrow that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Grace," he said softly, "I know this is hard for you. It's hard for me too. Olivia was everything." Grace forced a tight smile, masking her suspicion. "She was more than everything. She built this company." Mark nodded, feigning pain. "Which is why I want to honor her. I'll continue her vision, but I'll need your support. The board respects you." Grace tilted her head, studying him. His performance was flawless, almost, but she knew Mark too well. Behind the veil of grief, his ambition glimmered. "I'll think about it," she replied carefully. Mark's eyes lingered on her a second too long before he finally left, closing the door behind him. Grace exhaled, her hands trembling. She couldn't confront him yet, not without proof. That evening, Grace confided in her younger brother Daniel, a tech consultant. Over dinner, she slid the printed log across the table. "Can you recover the deleted footage from the garage cameras?" she asked. Daniel studied the file. "Maybe, if they didn't wipe the servers clean. But if someone tampered with this, it's serious, Grace. What are you really looking for?" Grace's voice broke slightly. "The truth? Olivia didn't just die in some accident. I think someone wanted her gone." Daniel frowned but nodded. "I'll see what I can do." Meanwhile, at St. Matthew's Medical Center, Olivia sat upright in bed for the first time, her strength slowly returning. Richard hovered nearby, watching her carefully. She looked out the window, her eyes sharp, her resolve unshakable. "They think I'm gone," she murmured. "Let them think that. It's the only way I can strike back." Richard leaned closer, his voice steady. "Grace suspects something. When the time is right, she'll be your greatest ally. But until then, you remain hidden." Olivia closed her eyes, her lips trembling. "Grace, if she finds out the truth, she'll never forgive Mark." Richard's gaze hardened, and that's exactly what needs to happen. That night, Grace's brother cracked into the corrupted files, and what appeared on the screen would change everything. Daniel's small apartment was dark except for the blue glow of his laptop. His fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating through layers of corrupted files. Grace sat beside him, clutching a cup of coffee she had long forgotten to drink. Her heart pounded in her chest as she watched the progress bar inch forward. "Almost there," Daniel muttered. "Whoever deleted this didn't do a clean job. I can patch some fragments together." The screen flickered, static filling the air, and then an image sharpened. The garage. Olivia's coupe gleaming under fluorescent lights. The timestamp read 11:42 p.m., the night before the crash. Grace leaned closer, her breath catching. A figure appeared in the corner of the frame, moving cautiously. "Zoom in," she whispered. Daniel enlarged the grainy footage. A man knelt beside the car, fumbling with something under the hood. His face turned briefly toward the camera before he placed a piece of tape over the lens. It was blurry, but there was no mistaking the sharp jawline, the tailored suit, the familiar posture. Grace's voice broke. "Oh my God, it's Mark." Her stomach churned as she watched him pull out a tool, his movements deliberate, calculated. He clipped something, wiped his forehead, then glanced around before disappearing into the shadows. Daniel sat back, stunned. "Grace, this isn't just negligence. This is attempted murder." Grace covered her mouth, tears stinging her eyes. "He killed her. He killed Olivia, and he's walking around pretending to grieve." Daniel's tone hardened. "You need to take this to the police." Grace hesitated, shaking her head. "Not yet. If we go too soon, Mark will find a way to twist it. He'll use his connections, spin the story. I need more, something undeniable." Her phone buzzed. A message from Richard Hale. "Meet me tomorrow. We need to talk about Olivia." Grace's eyes widened. Why would Richard, one of Lumina's largest investors, want to meet her privately? Could he know something? Meanwhile, at the Avalon Hotel suite, Mark poured himself another drink while Lisa flipped through glossy real estate brochures. "Beach houses," she said dreamily. "Palm Springs, Malibu, take your pick. We could start fresh anywhere." Mark's hands trembled as he downed the liquor. The insurance company was stalling, the board was restless, and deep inside, guilt gnawed at him. He saw Olivia's face in every shadow, heard her voice in every quiet moment. But then Lisa's hand slid across his thigh, grounding him in her poisonous comfort. "Don't worry," she purred. "It's only a matter of time before everything is ours." But across town, Grace stared at the frozen frame of Mark on the screen, his hand buried inside Olivia's car, sealing her fate. She whispered through clenched teeth, "No, Lisa, it won't be yours. Not if I can stop you." Her brother Daniel closed the laptop. "Grace, what are you going to do?" Grace stood, her expression hardening. "Tomorrow I'll meet Richard Hale. If he knows Olivia's alive, we're not just holding evidence, we're holding a revolution." And as midnight fell over Los Angeles, the truth sat like a ticking bomb, ready to explode in Mark's face. The cafe on Melrose Avenue was nearly empty that morning, its quiet hum a sharp contrast to the storm brewing between Grace Pham and Richard Hale. Grace sat stiffly at a corner table, her folder clutched against her chest. She had barely slept after uncovering the footage of Mark tampering with Olivia's car. Her mind spun with questions, but one thought consumed her. She needed answers. Richard arrived in his usual understated style, dark suit, no tie, calm authority. His presence drew glances even from the barista, though his eyes were fixed only on Grace. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. Grace didn't waste time. She pulled the folder open and pushed the printed screenshots across the table. "This is from the night before the crash. It's Mark. He cut her brakes, he killed her, Richard, and Lisa was involved." Richard's eyes flicked over the evidence, though his expression remained unreadable. Slowly, he exhaled. "I know." Grace froze. Her fingers tightened around her coffee cup. "You know? What do you mean you know?" Richard leaned forward, his voice low, deliberate. "Because Olivia isn't dead." Grace's heart stopped. For a moment, the world around her blurred, the sounds of clinking cups fading into silence. "What did you just say?" "She survived the crash," Richard continued. "I was there. I pulled her from the wreck. She's been recovering in a private facility under my protection. Only a handful of people know the truth, because if Mark or Lisa found out, they'd try again." Grace's breath came in short bursts. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were tears of relief. "She's alive?" she whispered. Richard nodded firmly. "Alive, but broken. She lost the baby." Grace covered her mouth, her body trembling. The grief she'd carried since the funeral clashed with a sudden surge of hope. "Oh my God, Olivia." Richard placed a steady hand on hers. "Listen to me. Right now, Olivia needs allies she can trust, people who loved her before all of this. That's why I asked to meet you. You're not just her friend, you're her sister in every way that matters. Together, we can help her rise again." Grace wiped her eyes, her determination hardening. "Then tell me what I need to do." "Patience," Richard said. "We build quietly. We gather undeniable evidence. When Olivia is ready, she'll face them herself." Grace nodded, clutching the folder of proof like it was a weapon. "Mark thinks he's already won. He has no idea what's coming." Richard's jaw tightened. "And when the truth comes out, it won't just ruin him, it'll destroy him." Meanwhile, across town, Mark and Lisa lounged in their penthouse, sipping champagne. Mark read the latest financial reports with a smug smile. "The board is finally warming up to me. Soon, Lumina will be mine." Lisa leaned back, her smile cold. "Ours, darling. Don't forget who pushed you to do what needed to be done." But while they celebrated, Grace sat in the cafe with Richard, her heart pounding with new purpose. Olivia was alive. Justice wasn't just a dream. It was inevitable. And as Grace prepared to reunite with her best friend, none of them knew that Mark's paranoia was already starting to grow. The weeks that followed were grueling. Olivia Nguyen remained hidden in Richard Hale's lakeside estate, a sprawling property secluded by tall pines and guarded gates. It was the perfect fortress, a place where the world still believed she was dead, but where she slowly pieced herself back together. Each morning, the sun rose over the calm waters, reflecting in the floor-to-ceiling windows of her room. And each morning, Olivia forced herself out of bed, no matter how much her body ached, no matter how heavy her heart felt. Physical therapy became her battlefield. With bandaged ribs and trembling legs, she clung to the parallel bars in the rehabilitation room. Sweat dripped down her temples as she pushed forward, every step burning with pain. "Again," she demanded, her voice hoarse but unyielding. Richard often stood nearby, arms crossed, his watchful eyes both stern and encouraging. "Don't push too hard," he warned one morning. Olivia shot him a fiery look. "I've already lost too much. Pain won't break me. It'll make me stronger." Her resilience impressed even Richard, a man who had seen titans rise and fall in the world of business. There was something unshakable in her spirit, something he found himself drawn to beyond admiration. At night, when the house grew silent, Olivia sat by the window, staring at the stars. Sometimes tears streamed down her face as she whispered to the child she lost, "I'll never stop loving you. But I promise, I'll make sure your death wasn't in vain." One evening, Grace finally entered the estate. The reunion was raw and overwhelming. As soon as Olivia saw her, she collapsed into her arms, sobbing. They took everything from me, Grace, everything. Grace held her tightly, whispering, "No, Olivia, they didn't take you. You're still here, and I swear we'll make them pay for what they did." The two women sat for hours, sharing memories, piecing together timelines, and plotting quietly. Grace revealed the recovered footage, sliding the USB drive across the table. Olivia's hands shook as she watched the grainy video of Mark kneeling by her car, clipping the brake line. Her breath caught, her jaw tightening. "I loved him, I trusted him, and he killed our baby." Grace's voice trembled with rage. "He's a monster, Olivia. But now we have proof." Richard entered, his presence grounding them both. Proof is only part of the battle. Timing is everything. Right now, Mark and Lisa feel untouchable. That arrogance will be their downfall. But you, he turned to Olivia, his gaze steady, you have to be ready to face them, stronger than ever. Olivia straightened in her chair, wiping her tears. "Then I'll be ready. I won't let them win." Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Mark poured himself another drink. The cracks in his armor were beginning to show. He stared out at the glittering skyline, unease gnawing at him. "Why do I feel like she's still here?" he muttered. Lisa rolled her eyes, brushing off his paranoia. "Olivia's gone. Stop torturing yourself." But deep down, Mark couldn't silence the whisper in his gut. Olivia's story wasn't finished. And he was right. Because Olivia Yin was no longer the broken woman he had left for dead. She was becoming a force he could never control. The city skyline glittered under the night sky, unaware that a silent war was about to begin. Inside Richard Hale's study, Olivia Yin sat at a grand oak desk, her eyes sharp, her hands steady. Grace sat beside her, scrolling through files on a laptop. Richard stood near the fireplace, his silhouette framed by the flickering light. Tonight was different. Tonight, Olivia was not a grieving widow or a broken mother. Tonight, she was a strategist. "Mark thinks he's already secured the board," Grace said, clicking open a confidential report. "But several directors are uneasy. They don't trust him. He's pushing too hard, too fast." Olivia leaned forward. "Then we use that unease, anonymous tips, subtle whispers, nothing direct, not yet. We let doubt spread like wildfire." Richard nodded approvingly. "Exactly. Undermine his credibility. The board doesn't need proof to hesitate, they just need suspicion." Grace looked at Olivia, concern flickering in her eyes. "Are you sure you're ready? Once this begins, there's no going back." Olivia's voice was firm, unwavering. "I lost my child because of them. They wanted me erased. If I don't fight back now, they win. I can't allow that." The plan was simple but powerful. That night, Richard's legal team drafted an anonymous packet of documents, financial inconsistencies, unexplained transfers linked to Mark, even hints of his affair with Lisa. Grace provided the HR logs that highlighted Mark's unusual behavior before Olivia's death. The packet was sent discreetly to several board members. By morning, Mark Tran's phone was buzzing nonstop. Emails, calls, and questions poured in from the directors. He sat in his office, jaw clenched, Lisa pacing angrily behind him. "This is ridiculous," Lisa snapped. "Anonymous accusations? It's just someone trying to ruin us." Mark rubbed his temples, sweat beading on his forehead. "But they're hitting too close to the truth. If the board starts digging..." Lisa grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. "Then shut it down. Distract them. Host a gala, announce a project, something flashy. We can't let rumors destroy what we've built." Mark nodded weakly, though unease gnawed at him. Deep down, he felt the walls beginning to close in. Across town, Olivia watched the chaos unfold from Richard's secure office. Grace scrolled through her phone, a satisfied smile on her face. "They're panicking. The directors are questioning him already." Olivia's lips curved into the faintest smile. It wasn't joy, it was justice beginning to take shape. "Good. Let him feel the fear he gave me. This is only the beginning." Richard studied her carefully, admiration in his eyes. "You're stronger than you realize. Every step you take, you're taking back control." Olivia turned to him, her voice steady. "This isn't about control. This is about truth, and I won't stop until everyone sees it." Meanwhile, Mark poured another drink in his penthouse, his hand trembling. He stared out at the city lights, haunted by a growing dread. "Why does it feel like she's still here?" he muttered. Lisa scoffed. "Olivia's gone. You need to stop looking over your shoulder." But Mark's eyes remained fixed on the horizon, his chest tightening with paranoia. Because somewhere deep inside, he knew Olivia wasn't finished, and her first strike was only a warning. The morning sun broke across the lake, painting Richard Hale's estate in shades of gold. Olivia Nguyen stood before the mirror in her private suite, her reflection both familiar and foreign. Weeks of recovery had restored her strength, but tonight would mark her true rebirth. Grace Pham adjusted the fitted black dress draped over Olivia's frame. The fabric hugged her figure, sleek and commanding, nothing like the fragile hospital gowns or the soft dresses she had worn before. This was armor. "Are you sure about this?" Grace asked softly, stepping back to admire her. "Once you step into the world again, there's no hiding, no turning back." Olivia's eyes held no hesitation. "I've been hiding long enough. Tonight, the world sees a woman who cannot be erased." Richard entered, carrying a small velvet box. He looked at Olivia for a moment, his gaze unreadable, then opened the box to reveal a pair of diamond earrings. "These belong to my mother," he said quietly. "She wore them the night she walked away from the man who tried to destroy her. Wear them tonight as a reminder. You carry that same strength." Olivia's throat tightened as she accepted the gift. She fastened the earrings, her hands steady. For the first time since the crash, she felt whole, not because she had forgotten her pain, but because she had embraced it. That evening, the three of them gathered in Richard's study to finalize their plan. A gala hosted by Lumina Group was just days away, orchestrated by Mark and Lisa to distract the board from their crumbling credibility. It would be their stage, their display of power. But Olivia intended to turn it into their downfall. "We'll keep your presence hidden until the perfect moment," Richard explained. "When you walk into that room, it won't just shock them, it will shatter everything Mark and Lisa have built." Grace smirked. "They'll never see it coming. I can already imagine the look on Mark's face." Olivia's voice was calm but resolute. "This isn't just about revenge, it's about truth. Everyone must see who he really is." Later that night, Olivia stood alone on the balcony overlooking the lake. The wind lifted her hair, carrying whispers of the life she had lost. She closed her eyes, placing a hand over her heart. "My child, you were taken from me, but I swear I'll fight for both of us. Your memory will be my strength." Inside, Richard watched her silently from the doorway. His admiration had deepened into something more, though he said nothing. He knew this moment was hers alone. Meanwhile, across the city, Mark tried on his tuxedo in front of a mirror. Lisa admired herself in a glittering gown, sipping champagne. "To us," she purred, "the stars of the night." Mark forced a smile, but unease gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the shadow of Olivia from his mind. He muttered under his breath, "Why does it feel like she's not gone?" Lisa rolled her eyes, pressing her glass into his hand. "Because guilt makes ghosts, darling. Now drink. Tomorrow, the stage is ours." But Mark had no idea that the ghost he feared was preparing to walk into his world, alive, stronger, and unstoppable. The grand ballroom of the Regency Hotel sparkled with chandeliers, casting golden light across marble floors. Music floated from a live orchestra, and the air buzzed with conversation, laughter, and the clinking of crystal glasses. The annual Lumina Group Charity Gala was always the highlight of the season, but this year it carried a deeper purpose. For Mark Tran and Lisa Vo, it was their stage. Mark adjusted his tuxedo, his smile wide but strained. Every handshake, every flash of a camera was a reminder that tonight was his moment to cement himself as the grieving widower who had heroically stepped into leadership. By his side, Lisa shone in a gown of shimmering silver, her smile flawless, her hand always poised delicately on his arm. "This is it," Lisa whispered, her eyes gleaming as she surveyed the crowd. "The board, the investors, the press, they're all here. After tonight, no one will question you again." Mark nodded. Though his chest felt tight, he raised his glass to the sea of guests. "To Olivia," he said solemnly when approached, the words smooth, practiced. "May her legacy live on through Lumina." The crowd applauded politely, their sympathy mixed with admiration. For a moment, Mark felt almost invincible. But in a quiet corner of the ballroom, Grace Pham watched with folded arms, her lips pressed into a thin line. She had played her role perfectly, smiling at the right moments, blending into the crowd, but her mind was elsewhere. She knew Olivia was alive, and she knew what was coming. Backstage, in a secluded suite above the ballroom, Olivia Nguyen stood before a mirror, her transformation complete. The sleek black gown Richard had chosen for her fit like a second skin, commanding and elegant. The diamond earrings glistened beneath her dark hair. Her bruises had faded, her eyes now sharp with determination. Richard adjusted his cufflinks beside her, his voice steady. "When you step into that room, time will stop. Let them feel the weight of what they've done." Olivia inhaled deeply, her hand trembling only for a moment before she steadied it. "This isn't just about me. It's about the truth." Grace's text buzzed on Richard's phone. "The room is ready. The board is watching closely." Down in the ballroom, the lights dimmed slightly as Mark took the stage with Lisa by his side. He placed a hand over his heart, his voice filled with rehearsed emotion. "Tonight, we honor Olivia Nguyen," he began. "Her vision built this company. Though her life was tragically cut short, I vow to carry her dream forward. Together, we will." The doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned, whispers exploded. And there she was, Olivia Nguyen, alive, radiant, walking with unshakable grace across the marble floor. Mark's words froze in his throat, his face draining of color. Lisa's glass slipped from her hand, shattering against the floor. The orchestra faltered, silence sweeping the room as Olivia stopped at the center, her eyes locked on the man who had betrayed her. And with one step forward, Olivia shattered the illusion of Mark's victory forever. The ballroom stood frozen, as if time itself had stopped. Olivia Nguyen's heels clicked against the marble floor, each step echoing louder than the orchestra's silence. Gasps spread like wildfire. Guests whispered in disbelief, clutching their pearls and raising phones to capture the impossible sight. Olivia, alive. Mark's face turned ashen, his mouth opening but no words escaping. Lisa clutched his arm, nails digging into his sleeve. This can't be real," she hissed under her breath. But Olivia kept walking, her black gown flowing like a shadow behind her, her chin lifted high. She stopped at the center of the ballroom, directly beneath the chandelier, her eyes fixed on her husband. "Surprised to see me, Mark?" Her voice rang out, calm yet cutting, carrying across the stunned crowd. The guests turned, their eyes darting between Olivia and the man who had claimed to be her grieving widower. Murmurs erupted. Cameras flashed. Mark stumbled forward, his voice trembling. "Olivia, you're alive? Thank God, I thought I lost you." He rushed toward her, arms half extended as if to embrace her. But Olivia raised a hand, stopping him cold. Her glare pierced through him, a look so sharp it sliced the air between them. "Don't you dare touch me," she spat, her voice low but venomous. "You lost me the night you cut the brakes." The room erupted in gasps. Lisa froze, her eyes widening in panic. Mark's face contorted. "What are you talking about? That's insane." He laughed nervously, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. "Everyone knows it was an accident." Olivia stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. "Was it an accident when you crept into the garage? When you took a cutter to the brakes of the car carrying your pregnant wife? Was it an accident when you watched me die in your imagination while you celebrated with her?" All eyes turned to Lisa, who flinched under the weight of the stairs. Grace, standing near the board members, spoke loudly, her voice carrying. "We have proof. Security footage, financial transfers, enough to show the truth." She held up her phone, the screen glowing with damning evidence. The directors whispered furiously among themselves. Some looked sickened, others enraged. The illusion Mark had built crumbled in seconds. Mark's voice cracked as he tried to salvage control. This is some kind of setup." "Olivia, she's lying. She's trying to ruin me." Olivia's eyes burned with fury, but her voice was steady. "You ruined yourself. You killed our child. You tried to kill me. And now, everyone knows who you really are." Richard Hale appeared from the shadows at the edge of the ballroom, stepping forward with commanding presence. His calm voice carried power. "The time for lies is over, Mark." The crowd parted for him instinctively, as though he were the rightful protector standing at Olivia's side. Cameras flashed wildly, capturing the sight of Olivia Nguyen alive, standing with Richard Hale, her strength undeniable. Mark's chest heaved, sweat dripping down his temple. His world was collapsing before his eyes, and he could feel it slipping through his fingers. And in that crushing moment, Lisa made a choice that would seal all their fates. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Guests whispered frantically. Board members exchanged horrified looks, and flashes from cameras illuminated every expression. Mark Tran stood frozen at the center, his face pale, sweat dripping down his temple. Beside him, Lisa Vaux's hand trembled as she tried to grip his arm. Olivia's accusations still echoed in the air. "You killed our child. You tried to kill me." Mark's lips moved, desperate. "They're lies. She's framing me." His voice cracked, unconvincing even to himself. But the crowd's eyes were no longer sympathetic. They were suspicious, judgmental, angry. Lisa could feel the shift, the danger pressing in on her. Her carefully built fantasy of wealth and status began to crack. Panic clawed at her throat. She had always been cunning, but she had never prepared for Olivia's resurrection. Grace stepped forward, her phone still raised. "The footage is here. Mark was caught tampering with Olivia's car. And there are payment records to Lisa. Consulting fees from a supplier connected to the sabotage." All eyes swung to Lisa. Her face drained of color. No, that's not true," she stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. Mark grabbed her wrist roughly, pulling her close. His whisper was harsh, desperate. "Keep it together. Don't you dare turn on me now." Lisa's eyes flicked to his, then to Olivia, alive, standing tall, radiant despite the scars of betrayal. For a moment, jealousy burned hot in her chest. Olivia had survived everything. Olivia had returned stronger than ever. And Lisa realized she was standing beside a sinking ship. Her survival instincts screamed. "Enough," Lisa suddenly cried, yanking her arm free. She stepped away from Mark, her voice shaking but loud enough for the entire ballroom to hear. "He did it. Mark cut the brakes. He told me everything. I wanted no part of it." The ballroom gasped. Mark's eyes widened, pure rage flooding his face. "You lying snake," he shouted, his mask finally shattering. Lisa pointed at him, her hands trembling. "He planned it. He said if Olivia was gone, the company and the money would all be his. I was a fool. I believed him. But I didn't touch her car. He did." Mark lunged toward her, but two board members grabbed his arms, holding him back. His face twisted in fury. "You'll regret this, Lisa. You'll go down with me." Lisa shook her head violently, tears streaking her mascara. "No, Mark, I'm not going down with you. I'm saving myself." Olivia watched in silence, her heart pounding. She had expected Mark's lies, but Lisa's sudden betrayal was something else entirely. It wasn't remorse, it was survival. Yet in that survival, the truth spilled into the open. The ballroom descended into chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras zoomed in on Mark's furious face, on Lisa's tear-streaked confession, on Olivia's calm, unyielding stance. Then the sharp voice of Richard Hale cut through the noise. "Enough. This ends tonight." He gestured, and two uniformed police officers stepped forward from the entrance, their badges glinting under the chandelier. The crowd parted instantly, the tension rising to a fever pitch. Mark's face drained as the officers approached, their hands moving to their cuffs. And in that moment, everyone realized the empire Mark had tried to steal was about to collapse before his very eyes. The ballroom felt like a stage where every secret was finally exposed. Guests whispered frantically, phones held high, capturing the scandal unraveling before their eyes. Mark Tran stood in the center, his tuxedo disheveled, his mask of control completely shattered. Beside him, Lisa Vaux trembled, her earlier betrayal still ringing in the air. The police officers stepped forward, their boots echoing against the marble floor. One officer announced firmly, "Mark Tran, you are under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy." Gasps rippled across the room. Mark's face twisted in rage. "This is ridiculous. You can't arrest me based on lies and hysteria." He pulled against the officer's grip, his voice desperate. "I'm Olivia's husband. I loved her." Olivia's voice cut through the noise, calm and razor-sharp. "You loved power. You loved money, but you never loved me, and you murdered our child to get what you wanted." The words struck harder than any handcuff. Mark flinched as if she had slapped him, his chest heaving with fury and fear. The officers clasped the cold steel cuffs around his wrists. The sound clicked like a verdict sealing his fate. Guests gasped and whispered louder, some raising their phones higher to record every second of his humiliation. Lisa backed away, her mascara streaking down her face. She tried to speak, her voice trembling. I didn't know he'd really do it. I thought it was just talk." But no one looked at her with sympathy. The board members stared at her with the same disgust they directed at Mark. Mark's fury boiled over. He whipped his head toward Lisa. "You betrayed me. You were in this with me. Don't you dare act innocent." Lisa shook her head violently, stepping back as though distance could free her. I was manipulated. I didn't cut the brakes. You did. The crowd erupted again, voices clashing, the orchestra long forgotten. It was chaos, until Richard Hale stepped forward. His commanding presence silenced the room like a conductor halting the music. This company, this city, and this family deserve justice, Richard said firmly. He turned to the officers. Take him out of here. Mark fought against the officers, his voice breaking with desperation. Olivia, please, you're my wife. Say something. Save me. Olivia met his eyes one last time, but her gaze was icy, her voice steady. The man I married died long before the crash. You don't deserve saving. Mark's body sagged as though the weight of her words crushed him. The officers dragged him through the crowd, his head lowered, cameras flashing mercilessly in his face. As the doors slammed shut behind him, silence filled the ballroom once more. All eyes turned to Olivia, standing tall beneath the chandelier, radiant and unbroken. Lisa sank into a chair, her body shaking. Her world was collapsing just as fast, and she knew the police would be coming for her next. Olivia inhaled deeply, her chest rising with both pain and strength. For the first time since the night of the crash, she felt in control again. But the fight wasn't over, because the courtroom would soon decide the final fate of Mark and Lisa. The Los Angeles Superior Court was packed to capacity. Reporters filled the benches, cameras flashed outside the doors, and the public strained to witness the trial that had gripped the city. At the front sat Olivia Nguyen, alive and radiant, her presence a living rebuke to the man who had tried to erase her. Mark Tran entered in an orange prison jumpsuit, shackled at the wrists, his once polished image reduced to shame. He refused to meet Olivia's gaze. Behind him, Lisa Vo followed, her designer dress replaced by a plain suit, her head bowed. The judge struck the gavel. Court is now in session. The people versus Mark Tran and Lisa Vo. The prosecution wasted no time. The district attorney rose, his voice firm. Your Honor, members of the jury, this is a case of greed, betrayal, and attempted murder. Mark Tran and Lisa Vo conspired to kill Olivia Nguyen by sabotaging her vehicle. Their motive, control of Lumina Group and her vast fortune. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Grace sat near Olivia, her supportive presence steady as the prosecutor presented the evidence. The screen lit up with the grainy footage Daniel had recovered. The jury leaned forward as Mark appeared on video, crouched beside Olivia's car, tampering with the brake line. The prosecutor's voice thundered. Ladies and gentlemen, this is no accident. This is intent. Mark's defense attorney jumped up. Objection! The footage is inconclusive, blurry, unreliable. But the judge allowed it. The jury watched in silence, their expressions grim. Next came the financial records, transfers from Mark's accounts to Lisa's under the guise of consulting fees. Then the testimony of Grace, who described the rushed funeral without a body, the inconsistencies, the lies. Finally, Olivia herself took the stand. She walked slowly but confidently, every step a testament to her survival. The courtroom fell into a hush as she sat, her eyes locked on Mark. Mrs. Nguyen, the prosecutor began, can you tell the court what happened that night? Olivia's voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. I was driving to my father's house. I pressed the brakes, and nothing happened. The car spun out of control. I thought I was going to die. I lost my baby that night. Her voice cracked, but she forced herself on. I later learned it wasn't an accident. The man I trusted, my husband, had cut the brakes. He didn't just betray me. He murdered our child. The jury shifted uncomfortably, some wiping tears. Mark finally broke his silence, shouting from his seat. She's lying. She was always better than me, always making me feel small. The judge banged the gavel. Order, one more outburst and you'll be removed. Lisa suddenly stood, her voice shaking. It's true. He cut the brakes. He planned it all. I was weak. I went along with him, but he's the one who wanted her gone. The courtroom erupted. Mark lunged toward Lisa, fury twisting his face, but the bailiffs restrained him. Olivia sat tall, her eyes unflinching as the chaos unfolded. And in that moment, the jury knew the verdict would change everything. The courtroom was silent, tense, and electric. 12 jurors filed back into their seats, their expressions grave, their decisions sealed in the weight of their silence. Olivia Nguyen sat at the front, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her heart pounded, but her face remained steady. This was the moment she had been fighting for, not just for herself, but for the child she lost. Mark Tran sat shackled beside his lawyer, his once proud shoulders slumped, his face pale with dread. Lisa Vo fidgeted nervously, her eyes darting around the room, as though looking for an escape that didn't exist. "All rise," the bailiff commanded. The judge re-entered, taking her seat with solemn dignity. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" she asked. The foreman stood, holding a slip of paper. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "Please read it." The entire room held its breath. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder," the foreman read, his voice steady, "we find the defendant, Mark Tran, guilty." Gasps filled the courtroom. Mark's head snapped down, his jaw clenching. His lawyer placed a hand on his shoulder, but it did little to stop the trembling rage in his body. The foreman continued. "On the charge of attempted murder of Olivia Nguyen, we find the defendant, Mark Tran, guilty." Olivia closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. It wasn't joy, but it was justice. The foreman turned the page. "On the charge of accessory to attempted murder, we find the defendant, Lisa Vo, guilty." Lisa gasped, her face draining of color. "No. I cooperated. I told the truth," she shouted desperately. The judge banged her gavel. "Order in the court." Mark finally broke, slamming his hands against the table, his voice raw with fury. "You don't understand. She made me feel worthless. She had everything, and I had nothing. What was I supposed to do?" Olivia rose slowly, her voice calm but cutting through his madness. "You were supposed to be my partner. You were supposed to protect your family. Instead, you destroyed it." Mark's eyes met hers, filled with regret too late to matter. His shoulders sagged as the bailiffs pulled him to his feet, shackles clinking. Lisa wept openly, begging for mercy, but the officers dragged her away beside him. The judge spoke firmly. "Mark Tran, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Lisa Vo, you are sentenced to 25 years for your role in this crime." Court adjourned. The gavel struck, sealing their fate. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed wildly as Olivia stepped into the sunlight. Grace stood at her side, and Richard Hale hovered protectively near. Reporters shouted questions, but Olivia paused only once, her voice steady, carrying through the chaos. "I survived betrayal, loss, and pain, but I am not broken. I stand here for my child, whose memory gives me strength, and I stand here for every woman who has been silenced or betrayed. We are not weak, we rise." The crowd fell into awed silence. Richard placed a gentle hand on her back, his voice low but full of promise. "This is your new beginning, Olivia, a life no one can take from you." She looked up at him, her eyes softening, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to smile. And as Mark was led away in chains, Olivia Nguyen walked into her future, free, unbroken, and stronger than ever. So the story has finally come to an end. My dear friends, are you still here with me right now? If you are, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a special way. Life is full of betrayal, loss, and pain, but also resilience, justice, and healing. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Olivia's journey reminds us of that truth. We can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we rise from it. If her strength inspired you, let it be a reminder for your own battles, that no matter the darkness, you can still find light. If you felt something tonight, please like this video, share it with someone who might need hope, and subscribe so we can keep walking through these powerful stories together.